Welcome, Annie here for the Same Set Syndrome Hop. We'll be creating this card today using the Create and Inspire July kit. So let's go over the components we used to create this card. The Wildflower Sentiment set, and I'll be using the Thankful. The Wildflower Floral set, and I'll be using these two flowers here. The Wildflower Meadow Stencil. And I'll be using these leaves right here. And to go with our stencil, I brought in some distressed oxide from my stash in peeled paint and bundled sage. We'll go back to the components from the kit. We'll be using the Nuvo Shimmer powder, the Tonic Studio watercolor panel. I went ahead and stamped my florals on the Mohawk smooth paper that was included in the kit. I did my first flower. I'm going to set that to the side, and we'll be coloring our second flower together. I stamped my sentiment ahead of time on a stitched fishtail banner using Versafine, Onyx black, and clear embossing powder. So let's get started with our card. Using the watercolor panel, I'm going to sprinkle on the Nuvo powder, which is Sunray Crossette. And you just tap on the little bit of the powder and it gets activated once you spray some water onto it. Once you spray the water, you'll get these beautiful bursts of colors. I know it looks more yellow in the container, but there's little pigments of rosy colored in there, and it just bursts when you hit the water. I'm just moving some of the pigment around with my finger and dabbing up any of the extra water with a napkin. And I'll continue to add more shimmer powder so I get the background the way I like it. Add shimmer powder and water. And I move around the pigments by just moving my card panel. I'm not so concerned about the pigments reaching the bottom, because I'll be stenciling on top of this, especially towards the bottom. Once I have it the way I like it, I'm going to grab my heat tool and heat set this. It's not needed, you can let it dry on its own, but I want it to move forward. So now we have our stencil, and like I said, I'll be using these leaves, and I'm going to mask off anything that I'm not going to be coloring. So all the extra leaves around the leaf I'll be using. I bring in my distressed oxides and the peeled paint and bundled sage. I start with the peeled paint. I want that towards the bottom, and I want to blend up to the bundled sage. And I will continue to do this across the panel in the same format. Peeled paint towards the bottom, bundled sage towards the top. This kit is so much fun. It has such beautiful items in here for you to use. The florals, the stencils. There are two stencils. I'm only using one of the two. And you have several florals and sentiments. Okay, so now that we're done with our stenciling, which is going to create some dimension in our card, I'm going to go ahead and trim this panel down a little bit. I want it to be smaller than my actual card. I'm going to set this to the side while we color our image. For our stem, we'll be using stem and leaves. We'll be using YG06 and G05. I start with the G05 right under the floral and towards the bottom of our stem. And I'll be using this towards the closest part of the stem on the flowers. Not the flowers, the leaves, and then I'll blend out with the YG06. I'm only using 2 markers on the leaves and the stem because it isn't very large. And I use the YG06 on the center of the stem. Now I'll move to our the petals on our flower. For the petals, we'll be using R30, R20, and R83. So it's R30, R20, and R83. I just color with the R30 the entire base of our flower here. I just fill it all in. Now, I'm not an expert colorist. I'm just doing what feels natural to me. You do how you feel natural coloring your florals. Now with the R20, I'm just doing flick marks from the base on up. So from the base of my petal towards the top of my petal. I just flick just to create a little more dimension and shadowing. I don't go all the way to the top. I just go about midway. I want the top of my petals to be light. So now we bring in the R83 and we do the same thing right on top of the R20. We're just going to cover, just do the same flicking motion. We're going about a third of the way up and filling it in. And if you feel you start losing some of your R20, you can go ahead and add some in to extend that, and then you can go finish it off with your R83. Now for the R30, I go from the top and I flick downward because I don't want to blend out all of my other shadowing part. I just want to add the R30 to make it nice and bright on the top. I do this to all the petals. Now a little cleanup, and we can start building our card. We have an A2 side folding card. I put some foam adhesive on the back of our panel, and I'm going to center it on the top of our card. Now we bring in our florals, which I also put foam adhesive, and I trim down some of the stem so I get one floral a little bit taller than the other. I also put foam adhesive on the back of my sentiment, and some cat hair got stuck to it, so I'm pulling it off. And there's our sentiment. Now in the kit, we received some Trinity stamps jewels. They're these beautiful clear jewels, crystal jewels. So I'm going to place some on our card. I start with one by the sentiment, one below the sentiment, and the rest I'll put around our leaves and florals. And the last one I'll put on the top left hand, just above the tallest flower here. And now our card is complete. Except I have a little glue seepage, so I'm cleaning it up here with my pokey tool. And I'll bring the card up so you can see all the shimmer and the jewels. And the dimension that it all creates with the stenciling. Again, we use our stencil, our florals, and our sentiment, which are all called the Wildflower. The shimmer, some bundled sage, and peel paint distress oxide, and our crystals. I'll have everything listed in the description box below, along with the rest of the hop lineup. Thank you so much for being here. I hope